Peace, y'all. You're tuned into the Edible Activist Podcast, and I am your host and favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones. On this show, we feed you empowering narratives and perspectives from the voices of emerging Black people and people of color in agriculture and business who are stewarding the land, healing communities, and advocating for food justice and economic power across the country. Their contributions and stories exemplify the spirit of activism in their own edible way. Let's get started. Peace, listeners. It's your favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones here. I need your help. In a previous episode, I mentioned the soft launch of our Patreon site and want to take some time in this episode to share a few more details with you. But before I do that, I want to take us back to 2009 for just a moment. This is where my why behind all of this began. And so for my new listeners, you may not have heard this story. For my dedicated tribe, you've probably heard this story a few times over again, but it's always important for me to go back to my why. And so I just want to take us back to 2009, where all of this got started. So I remember I was living in New York at the time, and my mother, who was actually in Maryland, she was experiencing some issues with her jaw. Her jaw would swell up after eating certain foods, and she did not understand what was happening. She decided, she went to a doctor. The doctor had no idea what was happening. And somehow she actually thought to visit a holistic doctor, a naturopath doctor, if you will. So she visited the naturopath doctor, and they went through, all the foods that she was eating and, process of elimination. And the naturopath doctor said, you should try removing gluten from your diet. My mother's like, bread? That's, okay. So when my mother removed anything that had gluten in it, she noticed that whatever allergen that she had actually ceased. Her jaw didn't swell, and she was just like, oh my goodness. It was at that point, a turning point that made her think, and mind you, my mother, worked back in the day in Georgetown, assistant to the dietitian department. She has always counted her calories. I remember coming up, she had like a small book that she would write everything down and put her calories next to it. So she's always been conscientious about what she ate and how much she was eating. And it was more so about the calorie intake. But we never connected the two of food and health. Also, for those who don't know, my dedicated tribe, I know my family's from Mississippi. I was born in Mississippi. So when my parents moved up here, everything that we still knew was we was eating chitlins out the crock pot. We were still eating all the Southern eats. But anyway, fast forward to take us back to 2009. Naturopath doctor said remove the gluten, and her allergens stopped. Her jaw stopped swelling. I mean, her jaw would balloon when she would eat gluten. And we said, oh my, what else are we consuming that is affecting our health that we can't even see? My mother, she took my sister and I to see a documentary, Forks Over Knives, which even just further confirmed, oh my goodness, food and health, totally connected, never married the two, if it is a marriage. And it was from there I said, I just felt absolutely duped. I felt absolutely duped. And I was mid-20s at the time. And I said, my entire life, I have never heard anyone talk about food and health. Story gets deeper. So fast forward, at this point, y'all, I don't even remember years, but fast forward, my mother, she took us to go see the Forks Over Knives. And again, I felt duped. And so it made me want to dig deeper into this. This was like a passion of mine. This was personal. So I started buying books, and I remember one of my first books was like the Chinese Study, if some of you all remember that. I was buying like other like farming books, and it was then where I learned how our food is grown is even more important. How our soil is treated is even more important. I said, wow, okay. Trudging along, I said, all right, let me start attending some networking events. Let me get deeper into this ag and how food is grown and how it really affects our health and how important the soil is. And so I started making connections naturally, just going to various events. Mind you, I'm an event planner by trade. I had a whole business, and I'm showing up at ag events, right? I'm showing up in these spaces, and these spaces are so white. I am one of the only Black person of color in the room. And this is, we're in the, these are events that are geared towards, those who are growers and farmers. And at that time, I was really deep into the soil. I was learning a lot about the soil. So I was making some like really great connections. And I said, oh my goodness. Now, simultaneously, I was also, I had ideas. So like, what is Food Talks and Edible Activists birth from a few things? For those who are with me since day one, y'all know. And at that time, while I was learning, I was showing up in these spaces and they were very white. And I was like one of the only few people of color in the room. I was birthing these ideas of like creating events to teach people about ag and, how food is, how our food is grown is so important. I was actually I did a few events. I did book clubs. I remember we went to go visit, that really popular farm out in Pennsylvania near Lancaster. It'll come to me, y'all. Like I was making some really great connections and doing some really great things, but I was still in this white space. And I said, my family is from the South and grew up on the land. My mom, who had the gluten allergy, grew up on the land, eating everything fresh off the field, out of their garden, rather, where they grew up. My great grandfather was a sharecropper. My dad grew up on the land as a child. And I was just so confused at that moment. And I said, not only, of course, this is a very white space, they're just white voices being represented only. There's no inclusion here. Can't say whether that was intentional or not. There are some spaces where it just totally wasn't intentional because we weren't present. But then I've been in other spaces where they may not felt like it was intentional, but there was no consideration. So here we are, right? I'm planning these amazing events. I got soil friends and I'm doing some really great things. And I'm like scratching my head. And I remember talking to my friend Jamie, if she's listened to this, Jamie. And I said, Jamie, I have to pivot this platform. And I'm not going to lie, y'all. Like back then, years ago, I was afraid to pivot. I was like, what are people going to think if I just put the spotlight on Black, Indigenous and people of color? Like, what? I kind of feel some type of way that I even thought about that. But, I'm transparent and I'm truthful. It's not like that now. So I said, I got to pivot. And she said, Melissa, you got to pivot. Like, you have to. And so I pivoted. I said, I have to create a space that amplifies the voices of BIPOCs in this space. It was so important to me. And there's so many other pieces to this story. I'm trying to give you the briefest of the brief. And it was at that moment where I pivoted. And again, it birthed out of so many different things. But, here we are today because, I have this grand big vision of this media platform that I created because I believe so deeply in the innovation that we're doing out in that we're creating, the innovation that's taking place in this space. And that's being created by artists and growers and farming enthusiasts and just the pioneers, and thanks to our ancestors. And I feel compelled to build a stage so that our voices continue to be heard. And I believe so deeply in that mission that I don't care what happens around me. I am committed. If I'm the most committed person out of, some of the X amount of thousand listeners that I have, like, I'm committed. But I had to, I often have to remind myself and take myself back to 2009 to when my mom had that, allergy, and how, that was my food story for quite some while, and it's still evolving. And bringing us to, 2021, almost embarking on 2022, that I am so glad that I did, because even more so now, just recognizing the need to continue to spotlight our voices, to amplify our voices, and, to be included in media itself, take food and ag away from it. It's still a white dominated space. And so in order for Food Talks in Color and the Edible Activist to continue, and it will, is that this is personal. I need support, continued support from our dedicated listeners and community. Like this is not a one person show, 2-person show. Shout out to Jack, the producer. And others in the past, like there's still honorary, colleagues and worker bees and just dedicated, edible activists who actually helped me. I had like a slew of people helping me when I was doing events around the city. So that is my story. It's still evolving. And I wanted to, again, just rewind and go back to 2009 and remind listeners of my why, and to talk more about Patreon, because I'm so excited about this space that we just joined. Again, it was a soft launch. I mentioned it briefly, because it's really going to take the support of community and our listeners and our tribe to continue to move this mission forward. Point blank. So I want to dig into Patreon just a bit. Again, I'm super excited to be a part of it. And some of you who haven't heard of Patreon are like, Melissa, what the heck is Patreon? It's truly an amazing platform for creatives like myself, for podcasts such as this, Edible Activists, for media platforms such as Food Talks in Color. We all live under the same umbrella. And so with Patreon, creators, again, such as this podcast and myself, cultivate meaningful, direct relationships with their top fans through exclusive content and community. It also provides thousands of creators the opportunity to create on their own terms. Patrons, which would be you, support creators like myself that they love, creators that they're dedicated to. I mean, you're in awe of Edible Activists. You're in awe of Food Talks in Color. So you support this platform in exchange for exclusive membership benefits. And by joining your favorite creator, by joining Food Talks in Color's Patreon page, which also supports Edible Activists, you gain access to exclusive content and just really the pride of fueling creative work that matters. Creative work that matters. This is a mission that matters. As a Black woman, I matter. As a Black woman in media, I matter and should be included. My patrons, with your support, you will help to continue to further this mission. And also just stand with me in that I matter. This matters. Black folk, Indigenous folks, people of color in the food space, they all matter. And so The other thing that I just really love about Patreon is that this is a place where we'll be able to intimately connect with our dedicated listeners of the podcast and dedicated fans of Food Talks in Color, not just on Facebook and Instagram, which I'm cool with, but it has its limitations. We know the deal with Instagram and Facebook. I love them. I do. But the algorithms won't stop our Patreons from seeing our post. And I'll say that again. The algorithms will not stop our patrons from seeing our post on Patreon specifically. And in fact, because of your support and depending on the level, and I want you guys to go visit the site, I'm going to give that to you in just a moment. You'll get to see more of our work, more than just what's on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. So this is content that I'm building specifically and exclusively for you, depending on the level that you choose. And so you ask, so more of what, Melissa? Bonus content only limited to patrons on the platform. Shout outs on Instagram and episodes potentially. Merchandise is included in one of the benefit levels. Fan request. If you have a request, an idea for a topic, a show, you get to make that request as a member. Again, conditions are, depends on the level of membership you choose, but you get to submit a request and that will be taken into consideration. There's also an opportunity to chat with me one-on-one. I get emails from amazing people who want to connect with me. And time is precious. It is. And I've had conversations with some really, really, really great people who've reached out to me from institutions and just other organizations via LinkedIn. And so this is just another opportunity to be able to connect with me one-on-one potentially, depending on the level that you choose in a virtual capacity. And so there's some other things too, but I just want to run those by you that we are on Patreon. And so what you get as a patron will be exclusive to you. That some of these things that you won't find on Instagram and Twitter or Facebook. We have a goal, and that goal is to have 100 Patreon subscribers by the end of this year. May seem ambitious. A few days ago, we had about 100 days left in the year. So that's about one person per day, 1.5. You can choose the half that you want to pick. But we're also pushing for 300 patrons within the first quarter of 2022. I say that with courage. I also say it with all the sincerity of my heart. And, asking, can you help us with this? Not only will you subscribe as a patron, but will you also help get the word out about our Patreon site to help us with this goal? And so first, the action that you can take is going to our Patreon site, which I will tell you, it's patreon.com. That's P as in Paul, ATREON.com/Food Talks in Color. Again, that's Patreon, just exactly how it's pronounced, .com/Food Talks in. That's just the letter N, color. And signing up, we have $5 monthly memberships, $10 monthly memberships, $25 monthly memberships, and we have $100 monthly membership as well. So I encourage you, please consider. Also share the love. I know you love this podcast, and we love and appreciate you. I love and appreciate you for being a dedicated listener. I do. And again, with my whole being, I really do believe in the mission of Food Talks in Color. I believe in this podcast. We have had some really dope people to grace the space. And when I say like great, not just because of, they're just great. They're dope folks, but the innovation and just to see them, they're like writing books now. They're on the news. They're traveling and speaking and on virtual platforms. I'm like, dag, like y'all are really doing it. And just to see how, BIPOCs are evolving in this space while sharing the Black agricultural experience, the indigenous agricultural experience, the rich history, giving credit to our ancestors, not forgiving where we came from, is so important. It is so important to who we are. It is so important. I have a grand vision, and I'm going to be the first. I'm going to say, this Food Talks in Color is going to be the largest media platform dedicated to BIPOCs in food and agriculture. I've said that here. I don't think I've ever said that, but I'm officially saying it because I believe in the power of words. I do. And so you're going to help me get there. You're already helping me getting there. You are. And I understand every dollar counts. Every dollar counts. I get it. Even if you're just out there advocating for folks to sign up for Patreon, even if you can't do it, I appreciate you. I really do. I really, truly do. So again, I hope you all appreciate it. Hearing my story again. It's evolving. I look forward to connecting with you on Patreon. Since the start of the pandemic, the only thing that slowed down was our ability to get out in the field and connect intimately with growers and farmers like we would like. We were able to do that pre-pandemic. We were allowed to do a lot of things freely pre-pandemic. But this show never stopped. We kept going. It kept going. And so I want to keep going. And, there are definitely, transparently, there are costs associated with the production of the show. But the big thing is that it's to create content, rich content for you all and to continue to further our mission. So I thank you. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for standing by me. Thank you all who purchase shirts. Go to the website. That's another way to support. Go to the website. And also, if you go to the website, www.foodtalksin, that's just the letter N, color.com, you can find a link to our Patreon site. And we also have an online store. We have some teas available as well. It's another way to support via our merchandise. So again, I ask, will you become a Patreon today? Will you become a patron today? That's what I meant to say. So go visit our site, patreon.com/Food Talks in Color. You can also find the link on our website, Food Talks in Color. If you're on Instagram, hit us up. Link is in the bio. Again, I sincerely appreciate your support, and let's get us to 100 patrons by December 31st. Peace. Thanks for tuning in. You can catch today's episode on fullserviceradio.org, as well as iTunes and Spotify. Be sure to follow Food Talks in Color, that's just the letter N, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for all updates. And did you know we're on Patreon? This is a way for you to support our podcast by taking action and amplifying the mission of BIPOC voices on edible activists. Depending on the level you choose, we'll shout you out on the show, send you a t-shirt, get access to bonus content, and you might even have a chance to chat with me one-on-one. Visit foodtalksincolor.com to learn more. And are you an edible activist? Have a story to share? Visit the website to connect with me. Peace and blessings. And remember, in the great words of Baba Tariqa Dunu, there is no culture without agriculture.